And we are live on YouTube. Welcome everybody to our second anti-spy bill event. I think in a few moments we will be simulcasting on Facebook. So hello to New Zealand and hello to the world. Tonight we have with us again the awesome Dotcom. And we also have with us CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou. But before we hear from those guys, we're just going to catch up a little bit on what's happened since the last event and what we'll be doing going forward. So the last event was a massive success, which I am personally really pleased about. We had put out 3 press releases to New Zealand media. They chose not to cover the event, but despite that, within a couple of hours of it, we had achieved 3.3 million Twitter impressions. We'd reached 500,000 people on Facebook, and we had about 10,000 live viewers, which is really incredible for an event that was just purely spread by word of mouth. We had no marketing budget, no corporations or governments behind us, and we did it ourselves together. So congratulations to everyone for that. After that amazing turnout, our press releases have now been picked up by New Zealand media. On Friday, 2 days ago, News Hub, which is a major New Zealand media outlet, published an article about our event tonight, and it got over 2,000 shares in under 24 hours. Since then, the Daily Dot has also picked it up and published to their 2.5 million Facebook followers. And we are now live also on the dailyblog.co.nz, which is one of the biggest and most significant political blog sites in New Zealand. So at the last event, I told you that we were going to hear from activists from all of the Five Eyes countries. We got through Australia and the United States and the UK and New Zealand, but we missed Canada because of some technical issues. So tonight we're going to start out by hearing from Bailey Lamont, who is president of the Pirate Party in Canada. She sent us a video message about how the same types of legislation that we've been subjected to in New Zealand have also been inflicted upon the Canadian public. So Joe, our awesome tech manager, is going to go ahead and play her message for you now.
Hi everyone, my name's Bailey Lamont. I'm an activist, I'm the president of the Pirate Party of Canada, and I'm also the vice chairwoman of Pirate Parties International. So I live in Canada, and Canada is part of the Five Eyes Alliance. So here's a little bit about our situation up here. So up until 1984, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, also known as the RCMP, acted as not only a police service, but as an intelligence agency that had the power to both spy on people and enforce the law. Long story short, this was very, very bad. They did terrible things, and in 1984, the MacDonald Commission was launched. This was an investigation into the crimes of the RCMP, which resulted in the creation of CSIS, or the Canadian Security and Intelligence Service, which is Canada's main spy agency to this day. Fast forward to 2015. The Anti-Terrorism Act, also known as Bill C-51, became law under Prime Minister Stephen Harper's Conservative government. This law is still in place. C-51 was widely opposed across the country. It still is, and it's not only seen as problematic by activists, but by many of the spies themselves and former spies who have come out and said how truly awful this law is. Canada's Anti-Terrorism Act not only gives our various police forces and spy agencies the power to store our information, our data, and share that information about us with one another freely, but it allows CSIS, which is not a law enforcement agency, to preemptively detain people who haven't even committed any crimes but are seen as threats to national security based on reasonable suspicion. So things like what you say online, if you're spreading terrorist propaganda, whatever that is, right? The thing is, this law doesn't even define what any of these things really mean, leaving it open for anyone to be targeted and locked up for their speech, for their ideas, and that's just completely unacceptable. I think we all agree on that. But so now today we do have a new government in power, the Liberal Party. Unfortunately, they fully supported Bill C-51 from the beginning. However, they have promised to reform it. Right now, that's what they're supposedly working on. However, none of the proposed reforms seem to address the most problematic elements of this law that I just described to you. And Parliament's out for the summer, so it's going to be a few weeks before they get back to it. So we'll see what happens, but right now, it still stands. I think we can all agree that state surveillance is completely incompatible with democracy, and that free speech does not exist in a country where the spies and the law enforcement people are given enough power to literally take anything you say as a threat to national security, which is what we have here in Canada, and from what I understand, it's what the other Five Eyes countries have too. It's important to keep in mind that surveillance is first and foremost an issue of power, where the powerful get to invade our privacy to uphold their power through their political system and criminalize anyone who speaks out or fights back. This is why events like this, where the public gets to join together to create policies that favor privacy for the average citizen and transparency for the state, are so crucial as all of us move forward in our respective countries. So big thank you to Suzie and the Internet Party for this amazing initiative.
Thank you so much for that, Bailey. That's really awesome. It's been great to hear from activists in each of the 5 countries. So my big piece of news is that we've decided that we are going to continue these events ongoing. So because we're in election season and we only have about 6 weeks to go, 5-6 weeks to go, we are actually going to hold these events every Sunday night for the foreseeable future to continue to work on the draft copy of the anti-spy bill together with all of you. And then we have been discussing an action plan for the next 12 or so months beyond that. I will tell you a bit more about that later on in the program. But for now, I want to move ahead and have us hear from John. So just quickly going to read you a little thing I wrote about John today in an op-ed for the Daily Blog. CIA torture whistleblower John Kiriakou was recruited from the high school that he taught Jared Leto at. In the decades to follow, he traveled the world, recruited other spies in turn, and oversaw operations that captured Al-Qaeda militants and sent them to Guantanamo Bay. Eventually, trained to keep secrets, there was one he could not live with. His government was torturing people. Eventually, he shared what he knew with his fellow countrymen, but tonight he will share it with New Zealand and the world. So John, please take it away. Tell us your story. Give us all the messages that you have to give.
Thank you so much for having me, for doing this, for giving me the opportunity, the soapbox. I'm happy to do it. And I'll apologize for the lighting. It's I have every light on in my room, and it's still, I fear, not light enough. Anyway, you're right. I was recruited into the CIA when I was in graduate school. I was teaching high school at the time at a private school in Washington, D.C. And as it turned out, my graduate school advisor was a CIA officer undercover as a graduate school advisor. And he was the one who recruited me into the agency. I had never really considered the CIA, but I was getting ready to graduate and I didn't have a job. I was getting married soon after graduation. I really needed the work. And the idea of seeing the world was exciting to me. And so I said, sure, I'll go through the process. So I did. I went through the process, got hired. Started on the 1st of January 1990, and started working as an analyst. So really, I was sitting in a cubicle, thinking the big thoughts, writing papers for the president, the vice president, the secretaries of state and defense, the national security advisor, and that was great. It was a lot of fun for a while, and then I got bored. Went overseas, also as an analyst, to the Middle East. Learned to speak Arabic, and then went back to headquarters again in 1997. Again, I was bored, and so in 1998, I made a very unusual switch from analysis to counterterrorism operations. and went overseas as an operations officer, like actually trying to infiltrate terrorist groups and either disrupt future attacks or break up the group, and found that I had a knack for it. It was dangerous, certainly, but it was interesting, it was fun, it was important. And so I decided, well, maybe I found my place, my niche. I went back to CIA headquarters after serving overseas in 2000. And then September 11th hit in 2001. That changed everything at the CIA. As it turned out, the CIA, after 2001, returned to its roots. The CIA that I had come of age in was not the real CIA. The real CIA was one that requires great oversight, and one that is constantly pushing the bounds of morals and ethics and legality. But I was as angry as every other American on September 11th, and I volunteered certainly to go to Afghanistan and fight or do whatever was necessary. What I ended up doing was I was sent to Pakistan as the chief of CIA counterterrorism operations there. And it was in that job that in early 2002, I led a series of raids that resulted in the capture of Abu Zubaydah, whom the CIA believed at the time was the #3 in Al-Qaeda, and many dozens, I'm not allowed to say the exact number, but many dozens of Al-Qaeda fighters at safe houses all over Pakistan. Well, I had occasion after capturing Abu Zubaydah to have a long conversation with him. In fact, I sat with him for 54 consecutive hours after his capture. He was very upset, as you can imagine. He cried a lot. He said that he would never know the touch of a woman. He would never know the joy of fatherhood. And I said, listen, you are not the victim here. There were 50,000 people in those towers. What did you think we were going to do? Did you think we weren't going to try to find you, to capture you, or to find or kill bin Laden? And he said that he never wanted to attack the United States on September 11th. He wanted to attack Israel. He said all he ever wanted to do was to kill Jews. And I said, listen, I am the nicest guy that you're going to meet in this experience. My colleagues are not as nice as I am. So if there's one thing that you do, it's that you should cooperate. And he said, you seem like a nice man, but you're the enemy, and I'll never cooperate. I said, suit yourself. Later that night, a CIA private jet flew in. 3 FBI agents and I loaded him onto the plane. He asked me to hold his hand the whole time, and I wished him the best of luck, and I never saw him again. Well, 2 months later, I returned to CIA headquarters, and on the strength of the Abu Zubaydah capture, I had been promoted, and I was named the executive assistant to the CIA's deputy director for operations. And it was in that capacity that I had access to literally everything in the CIA, every operation, every sensitive compartment, everything. And it was in that position that I realized that we had initiated this torture program. Now, I was in the cafeteria one day, and a former colleague from the CIA's Counterterrorism Center approached me and said, hey, I'm glad I ran into you. Do you have any interest in being, and these were his words, certified in the use of enhanced interrogation techniques? I had never heard the term before. So I asked him what it meant. And he said very excitedly, we're going to start getting rough with these guys. And I said, well, what does that mean? And then he delineated these 10 torture techniques. And I said, well, that sounds like a torture program. I said, I think I have a moral problem with that. And I declined. Well, as it turned out, of the 14 people that they approached asking if they wanted to be trained in these torture techniques, I was the only one who said no. That was a source of great disappointment for me. but I kept my mouth shut. I left the CIA 2 years later and still kept my mouth shut. But then in late 2007, I couldn't live with the administration's lies anymore. It seemed like every time I turned on the television, President Bush was denying that there was a torture program. And the CIA's director at the time, and directors after him, George Tenet, were all denying that there was a torture program. And I knew that that was a lie. I knew that they were lying to the American people. And I believe in transparency. I believe that the American people have a right to know what their country is doing in their name. And so I decided in December of 2007 that I was going to blow the whistle on this program. And I gave a nationally televised interview to ABC News in which I did exactly that. I said three things that have utterly changed the course of the rest of my life. I said that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. I said that torture was official US government policy. It was not the result of a rogue, as President Bush had said. And I said that the torture program had been personally approved by the president himself. As you can imagine, within 24 hours, the FBI began investigating me. And this is where the story, in my view, becomes very sad. It becomes un-American. The FBI investigated me for a full year, from December 2007 to December 2008. And they decided at the end of that investigation that I had not committed a crime, that the interview was not a crime because the information was not inherently classified. And so they closed the investigation. 4 weeks later, Barack Obama was inaugurated as president of the United States. Barack Obama, the self-described most transparent president in history. And I should preface this by saying that I believed in the whole hope and change slogan of the Obama campaign. Not just that, I worked on the Obama campaign. I took my children to the inauguration so they could see this historic moment when for the first time in history, an African-American man had become president. I mean, this was an incredible moment for America. But what I did not know was that as soon as he became president, the CIA asked Barack Obama to secretly reopen the case against me, which he did. I had no idea that I was under investigation. I had no idea that the FBI was intercepting my phone calls and was reading my emails and had teams of surveillance on me. And so I went about my regular business. So what was my regular business? Well, believe it or not, John Kerry, who at the time was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, called me and invited me to join the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff as the chief investigator, investigating waste, fraud, abuse, and illegality in the State Department. And so I took that job, again, having no idea that I was under FBI investigation for what became 5 felony charges. The FBI investigated me for 3 more years. And finally, in January of 2012, I was charged with these 5 felonies, including 3 counts of espionage. Espionage is one of the gravest crimes with which an American can be charged, and frequently it carries with it the death penalty for telling the American people that the CIA was torturing its prisoners. Now, there's something that happened in the interim, and I had no idea the significance of it until this whole thing was over. One of the great things, the most wonderful things about working for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is that you get to have lunch with foreign diplomats all the time. And, you get together for lunch, you talk about the events of the day, whatever happens to be in the paper, you talk about diplomacy. I got a call one day, a totally normal and routine call from a Japanese diplomat who was the number 3 in the Japanese embassy in Washington. And he invited me to lunch. So we went to a small restaurant on Capitol Hill. And I remember the lunch as being delightful. I remember we talked about Israeli elections and Turkish elections and the Arab-Israeli peace process. And at the end of the lunch, he said to me, "So what's next for you?" And I said, "Well, I'm actually thinking of resigning from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I promised Senator Kerry that I would give him 2 years. It's been 2.5. And I think I'd like to go into business for myself. I have 5 kids. I need to start saving some money for college. I think I'd like to go into the private sector." And very excitedly, he said, "No, don't do that. If you give me information, I can give you money." And I said, "What's wrong with you? Do you have any idea how many times I've made that pitch in my career? Shame on you," I told him. I ended the lunch and I went directly to the office of the Senate Security Officer. And I said, "I was just pitched by a foreign intelligence officer." And he said, "Oh, is it that damn Russian again?" And I said, No, it's a Japanese of all things." And he said, "Really, a Japanese? Okay." He said, "Well, sometimes they like to see what we're doing vis-a-vis trade." And then he asked me to write it up as a memo. He was going to send it to the FBI. I said, fine. So I sat there in his office and I wrote up the memo. He sent it to the FBI and then called me the next day and said 2 FBI agents were going to come and interview me. So they finally came to my office and said, "Okay, here's what we want you to do. We want you to call him back and we want you to try to get him to tell you exactly what information he wants and how much money he's willing to pay for it." I said, "Okay, do you want me to wear a wire or something?" And they said, "No, we're going to be at the next table and we'll just listen to the conversation." I said, fine. So the morning of that lunch, they called me and said that something had come up. I should just go forward with the lunch and write them another memo. So I met with this guy a second time. And then they asked me to meet with him a third time and a fourth time and a fifth time, which I did because I'm a patriot. Well, I wrote up these memos after each lunch. And finally, in the 5th lunch, he said that he had been promoted. He had been transferred to his dream job, and he was going to be the number 2 in the Japanese embassy in Cairo. A year after that last lunch, I was arrested. And we received discovery from the Justice Department. Now, discovery is when the prosecution has to turn over to the defense literally everything that it's collected so that the defense can use that to defend itself. In this discovery, we found a series of memos. The first indicated that there never was any Japanese diplomat. He was an FBI agent undercover, and he was trying to get me to commit real espionage. And I asked my lead attorney, why would they do such a thing? And he said, because they have a shit case and they know it's a shit case. I hadn't committed espionage. I had blown the whistle, fair and square. I told the American people what they had a right to know. Well, we also received 3 memos between the CIA and the Justice Department. The CIA wrote to the Justice Department and said, charge him with espionage. The Justice Department wrote back and said, but he hasn't committed espionage. And the CIA wrote back and said, charge him anyway and make him defend himself. And that was the Obama administration. Now, the Espionage Act here in the United States was written in 1917 to combat German saboteurs during the First World War. Between 1917 and 2009, it was used to charge 3 Americans with espionage for talking to the press. Just under the Obama administration, 8 Americans were charged with espionage for speaking to the press. The Obama administration used the Espionage Act as an iron fist to stamp out dissent. Now, I was a guy who always colored within the lines. I was nobody special. There was nothing unusual about me in any way. I'm just a guy. I'm just a normal guy. But one of the things that so grossly disappointed me was that I was the only one who said something. You know, there were hundreds of people inside the CIA who knew about this torture program, hundreds. We now know from the Senate torture report that people inside were objecting to it. They were writing cables back from the secret prison saying, this is awful, this is disgusting. A couple of them curtailed their assignments, which means they asked to return to headquarters. It's a career-ending move, but not a single one of them said something publicly. Even worse than that, not a single one of them ever said anything to the Senate or House Intelligence Committee, the oversight committees. I was the only one who did. That was a source of great disappointment for me. Well, in the end, Kim and I were talking about this off camera a few minutes ago. In the end, I had to defend myself against these 5 felony charges. I was facing 45 years in prison. And over the course of 10 months, our negotiations had brought the Justice Department down to 10 years. They wanted me to do 10 years in a federal penitentiary. This was what they called their best and final offer. And I turned it down. And I said 2 things. I said, first of all, I haven't done anything wrong. And because I haven't done anything wrong, I'm not doing 10 minutes, let alone 10 years in prison. Secondly, I'm a very long time former CIA officer. And in my 15 years in the CIA, I witnessed hideous shit, crimes against humanity, war crimes. And I'm going to have to testify in my own defense. And I might accidentally say something about these horrible crimes that I've witnessed my colleagues perpetrate over the years. And it might slip out in the course of my, my testimony. And so the CIA came back and said, all right, do 2.5 years. You'll end up serving under 2. I actually turned that down. And then one of my 11 attorneys, the one who I liked and respected the most, pulled me aside and said, you just don't get it. This isn't about innocence or guilt. This is about cutting your losses. This is about inflicting the least amount of pain on yourself and your family. It doesn't matter whether you did it or didn't do it. The federal government wins 98.2% of its cases, according to ProPublica. And he said, if you were my brother, I would beg you to take this deal. So I'm begging you, take the deal. He said, this can be a blip in your life, or it can be the defining event of your life. You can be home early enough that your children won't even remember you were gone, or you can get out when your children are in college. And so I took the deal. It becomes an economic decision. With that said, I would do the whole damn thing over again. Somebody had to say something. Transparency is real. It's important. A democracy can't function without transparency. And again, the American people have a right to know what their government is doing in their name. And so I'm glad that I said something. I'm glad that I said something. I'm glad that I have continued to say something. It's cost me my marriage. My wife left 3 months ago. She said it's just too much work to be Mrs. John Kiriakou. To tell you the truth, I don't blame her. But I had to do the right thing. And this was the price that we all have to pay. It was all worth it. Thanks for listening.
John, that's just an incredible story, a remarkable story. So really the FBI were involved in an attempt to entrap you. Is that what you were just telling us there?
Yeah, it's all about entrapment, to tell you the truth. And that's why when I got to prison, I'd been in prison, let's see, March, April, May, June, 4 months when Ed Snowden went public with his revelations. And I wrote an open letter to Ed Snowden I followed it up with a private letter through, we have a mutual attorney. But I told him what I thought he should do, just from the benefit of my own experience. I told him to find the best national security attorneys money can buy, essentially my attorneys, which he did. He engaged my attorneys. I told him to cultivate his natural basis of support, especially on Capitol Hill. Now that's taken a little bit of time, but he's done that as well. And it's funny because the far left and the far right end up meeting at a point. The ideological spectrum, I believe, is not a straight line, it's a circle. And they've come together at the point where they really care about civil liberties. And it's those civil libertarians on the left and the right who have come out in support of Ed Snowden. Because of that, we are finally just now beginning to see elements of the Patriot Act fall by the wayside, finally, after 16 years. I think that's thanks to Ed Snowden. And the third thing I said, and this was the most important thing, don't ever, ever, under any circumstances, talk to the FBI. I said they will lie, they will cheat, they will twist your words, they'll wiretap you, and then take your statements out of context to use against you in court. Remember, they get promoted if you go to prison. That's the only way for them to get ahead in their careers, is for you to go to prison. And if you go to prison for a long period of time, they're going to get a performance bonus. They're going to get transferred to a better position inside the FBI. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like everything a democracy should not be. So I got a visit from Ed's father. He actually came to prison to visit me and told me that Ed had appreciated the letter, that he had taken it seriously, and that and he was abiding by it. That meant a lot to me. All worth it.
That is huge. It's extremely important for people who are going through this to have people who have been through it before able to advise them. So that was an amazing initiative that you took.
Well, can I interrupt you on that point? I got very lucky, actually. Before I left for prison, there were something like 625 people who had expressed interest in being placed on a mailing list, an email mailing list, just to receive something from me saying, I'm fine, I'm in prison, it's not so bad, I'm going to be okay. So I wrote this open letter and I sent it to my attorney. She sent it to the publisher of Dotcom, which no longer exists. That was Jane Hampshire. And Jane, I had no idea Jane was friendly with Arianna Huffington. And so my initial open letter, which I called a letter from Loretto, received 1 million hits thanks to Arianna Huffington. When I wrote the open letter to Ed Snowden, again, I just expected it to go essentially to my attorney, maybe to a handful, couple hundred of other people, but eventually it would make its way back to Ed. Again, with Arianna's help, it went viral. I ended up with over 2 million hits. CNN drove to the prison to interview me. The American news program 60 Minutes came to the prison. It was in everything from like Time Magazine to Playboy to The Economist to the Atlantic Monthly. And thanks to Arianna, we got it immediately back to Ed, 2 million hits, and I got my side of the story out there. This is something that I learned early on, is we really need to take advantage of our access to the media. I mean, we can have these great ideas and we can sit and talk amongst ourselves about how smart we are and how creative we are and what great ideas we have. And it doesn't make any difference if nobody knows that we're doing it. So if we have access to the press, that's how we win.
You know, John, let me weigh in here. First of all, thank you so much. What an incredible story. You are a hero for having done what you did, and I admire your courage.
Thank you so much, Kim.
You know, in my case, the first priority was to make sure that I don't get bail, because they are very much aware that the moment you are outside, you can tell your side of the story. And in my case, they had told their side of the story with the indictment and a massive press release, and they gave my indictment and some background information to about a dozen news outlets who were ready to press print the moment the raid went down on my home and on my family. So for me to be able to get bail and to get out and talk about what happened was their biggest concern, because they knew already, that what they did was at the edge of what's possible in a novel copyright case. And then their second priority was, after I had bail, to silence me by disallowing me to have any internet access whatsoever. Anyone coming to my house had to leave their smartphones outside. I had very strict bail conditions that were restricting my speech and limiting my ability to be out there and tell my story. And thirdly, they seized all my money to make sure that I can't afford any lawyers, because that is the biggest power they have. They have unlimited funds. They have a huge war chest. They can keep going for years and appeal every win you have until you run out of money, you run out of patience with your relationships, who just can't carry the burden of this fight anymore. That's why your relationship broke up. That's why my relationship broke up. They really want to destroy you and silence you. So for you to do the exact opposite, for you to go and write these letters from prison and do all these interviews and to keep talking about it, that is really the most powerful and courageous thing. And the more people learn about your story, the more people can hear what happened to you, they will get angry. They will feel just like I did listening to you, very upset, not understanding why a government could do something like that. Why a government that is supposed to serve the people is doing something like that to their own citizens. And for that, I want to applaud you. It's amazing that you tell us this story and share it with everyone.
Thank you so much. You raised such an important point that I meant to mention. And the point is that it's not just to prosecute you. You're right. It's to ruin you financially, personally, professionally. It's to separate you from your friends, from your family, from your natural allies or supporters. They do these things in the United States. There are two strategies that the prosecution uses in the United States. One is called charge stacking, and that is, let's say you really did do something wrong. Let's say you conspired with somebody to do something. Well, they won't just charge you with conspiracy. They'll charge you with 5, 10, 20 different crimes. And they'll force you to defend yourself against those 20 different crimes to the point where you go bankrupt. And that usually takes, 6 to 12 months. And then once you're bankrupt and you're weak and you're desperate, they'll come back and they'll say, well, we'll drop all of these charges but one if you plead guilty to one and take this number of years in prison. Well, that's what they intended in the very beginning. They knew you didn't commit these 20 crimes. They intended for you to take the plea. And because you're broken by then, well, of course you're going to take the plea. And that's why they win 98.2% of their cases. Now, the other reason that you're going to take that plea is that juries here in the United States, especially where you and I have been charged in the Eastern District of Virginia, they would convict a bologna sandwich of a crime if the government asked them to. When your jury, Kim, and this is a warning to you, When your jury is made up of people from the CIA, the FBI, the Homeland Security Department, the Defense Department, and the intelligence contractor community, you don't have a prayer. You can't win. It doesn't matter if you're innocent. You're not going to win. You're going to go to prison. And if you don't take a plea, you're likely going to die in prison. That's their goal. Their goal is for you to die in prison, not because they don't like you necessarily, but because they want to scare the living daylights out of everybody else so that they can say, you see what we did to Kiriakou? You want that to happen to you? Well, you better keep your mouth shut. In the meantime,
you're absolutely right, John. And what I've learned about the justice system in the US absolutely confirms that. Let me give you one example. The judge that is on my case in the district court in the Eastern District of Virginia, he was a lawyer before he started his career as a judge for Disney. He was a partner in a law firm for the Walt Disney Corporation, their largest client. And has anyone ever heard of conflict of interest? You know, he is the judge overseeing the world's largest copyright case. So that is number one. The second big surprise was how easy they could commit judge shopping, because every judge in the Eastern District is on at a certain date. And if they make sure that they submit their case on that day, they know they're going to get that judge. Yes. So they picked my judge. The judge has a history to work on copyright for the studios. And on top of that, I found out through my research, and we hired an investigator, that the judge himself had an issue with the law because someone burned his house down in Virginia, right? And the fire department came and the FBI came, and it was big in the news, and everyone was like, who was trying to hurt this judge? And a big investigation was jump-started. And then it turned out it was his own son. And they dropped the whole thing, and never did anyone hear about it again. No one was charged, everything was dropped, and the judge was taken care of by his government. And this is the guy who made a decision that said, destroy all of these servers worldwide, take down his entire business, make 220 people unemployed, go do the raid. How in the world can you have a fair process with someone like that in charge? And, everything that I've learned over the last 5.5 years is that the entire system is completely corrupt. The 98% success rate that you spoke about earlier, those are not cases that they win in court in front of a jury. Those are all plea bargain deals. They torture you into accepting guilt. Even if you've done nothing wrong, they give you this list of 20 charges. In my case, they want me to throw in jail for 88 years. And you're absolutely right. From everything that I've seen from the beginning in my case, all they care about is hurting me and killing me. They want to lock me up for as long as possible. And you are absolutely right. If I die, they would probably celebrate that, And the thing is, every now and then, they run into people like us, smart people who understand what's going on, who understand that there are other people out there who are interested in this, who are fighting against this injustice, who want to reform a system that is designed to be unjust. And, our service to the public really is to fight these cases to the end, to let everyone know on and on again about what's going on, remind everyone, because that is the only way we're going to change anything about this. If you and I and Julian and all the other people that are being persecuted, especially by this prosecution team in the Eastern District of Virginia, the deep state persecutors, they always remind me of the church's Inquisition. If we don't do this, no one else will. And, we need to make sure that through the events like this, we let people know about it. And your story is just a prime example, because what you have done, you have exposed a crime. it is a crime in the United States to torture someone, right?
Yes, it's a crime.
And what do they do to circumvent US law? They ship them off to foreign prisons, secret locations where they torture them, and then they say, well, the US law really doesn't apply. But then in my copyright case, they say, just because I have a few servers in the United States and I've never been there, my business wasn't based there, I didn't sign up to their laws, yet here I am, I can be extradited. So how does it work that these guys can torture anyone they want in these foreign sites by American spies who do this or approve this torture, and then there's no charges for them simply because they say it's happening outside of US borders and our jurisdiction? It's really a hypocrisy. And for someone like you, who has exposed such a significant crime, which is against American law, international law, the human Human Rights Charter, and everywhere in the world, countries signed up to treaties that something like this should not happen. And here you are, you point out the truth, you tell the world about these atrocities and terrible crimes, and has anyone other than you been in jail for the US government torture program?
No one. The torturers are free. The men who came up with the torture program are free. The attorneys who justified it are free. The people who implemented it are free. Even the CIA officers who murdered prisoners during the course of the interrogations are free. I'm the only one that was ever prosecuted.
And the psychologists who were the architects of the program have just signed a cash settlement to avoid going to trial for it.
To make that worse, that cash settlement is being paid to the victims by the American taxpayers, because in 2001, the CIA indemnified the psychologists, and the CIA agreed to pay all of their legal expenses and any settlement that might come out of the case.
And they had already made, I think it was reported, something like $46 million.
$81 million. $81 million. Mm-hmm.
So that's the price tag. That was the price tag to design something so sick and twisted.
Yes.
I know also, from the small amount of information we know from the Senate torture report, which is under severe lock and key, and which the agencies are doing absolutely everything they can to never allow that full report to be accessed by the public. But from what little we do know in there, apparently they specifically recruited CIA torturers who had a history of domestic and sexual violence.
It takes a special kind of monster to be able to inflict that kind of physical and psychological and emotional harm on a person and not lose his soul. You have to have no soul in the first place in order to be able to do something like that.
I think a really relevant question for New Zealanders, John, in light of recent events, to ask you is, are you aware of New Zealand or Australian troops, ANZAC troops as we know it, or special forces being involved in extraordinary renditions? The reason I ask you this is because it has recently come to light that they were, and initially we were told that it was revealed that they were involved in handing detainees over to foreign forces who they knew would torture them.
Just a moment of caution here. This is very important. John, don't say anything that could get you in legal trouble again. You need to be very careful in answering these questions. I don't want you to say anything that is going to get you in legal trouble, yeah?
Yeah, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that.
Answer in theory is fine. Yeah. You definitely don't have to give specific knowledge that you have, but just in theory. The reason I ask is because recently it has been revealed in the famous investigative journalist Nikki Hager's book, Hit and Run, that New Zealand forces have been involved in massacring unarmed civilians in Afghanistan, including women and children, in revenge raids that were launched upon villages that supposedly contained militants, but it turned out they didn't. they killed them all and burned all the houses down as literally a revenge raid. So I'm very interested to know if you're aware of forces other than of allied American forces that are allied to the Americans also being involved in extraordinary renditions.
I'm not, to tell you the truth. Certainly, I never ever encountered a New Zealander when I was in the region, and even the Australians. When I was in Pakistan, and we captured an Australian national. The Australians jumped up and down because they wanted him to be turned over to Australia immediately rather than to go to Guantanamo. So, no, I'm glad to say I never encountered any Australian or New Zealand military officials, intelligence officials, nobody involved in this kind of thing.
That's good to know, quite frankly, considering everything else they appear to have been involved in.
Yeah, I actually hadn't heard that about the villagers. It's awful.
Yeah.
If it's true, it's a war crime.
It is literally a war crime, and it's one that the New Zealand government have gone to quite some lengths to try to cover up. And at the moment, there are calls for a public inquiry into what happened, and the government is resisting those holding the inquiry.
They always do.
Yeah, of course, and have gone to some lengths as well to attempt to discredit the authors of the book, even though they are unimpeachable as per their record. So we don't know yet what will come of that, but there are certainly people in New Zealand who are fighting very hard to get the truth out there about what has happened and about our involvement in those crimes. Okay, Kim, do you have anything else that you want to ask John? And I think we'll go to Q&A shortly because I know there's been a number of questions asked.
Yes, and I still have a couple of things actually. John, I really want to pick your brains because, you know, you're one of the guys who was inside for such a long time. And, you know, your understanding of the intelligence community is priceless. So if you don't mind, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Just like the dark sites, right, that they used outside of US borders to torture people, they are also using the Five Eyes partner countries like New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and Canada to spy on Americans where the US themselves legally is not permitted to do that. And then through X-Keyscore and all these other programs, they get access to that information anyway. So they outsource the spying to these other countries on Americans. And at the same time, the US spy agencies give those foreign agencies access to their own fiber network, give them access to all the backdoors, all the tools that they have developed. And then through the back door, they are spying en masse on Americans, which is a breach of the Constitution and US law. Is that kind of a good description of what went on to circumvent any kind of prosecution in torture cases? Is this how spy agencies, you would say in your experience, operate? If they have a challenge nationally and it's against the law, then they will utilize friendly nations and their agencies to still do it and circumvent the law.
Absolutely, yes. This is the nature of our spy agencies. You know, the CIA's culture is such that it will push the bounds of legality until it is slapped down and told to stop. We've gone through these periods in modern American history where we have had strong oversight committees. For example, 1975 to 1981, where we had Frank Church chairing the first Senate Intelligence Committee and Otis Pike chairing the House Intelligence Committee. Those were strong overseers. And then during the Reagan administration, we had weak overseers. Well, frankly, since September 11th, I wouldn't even say that the intelligence committees are oversight committees. I would say that they're cheerleading committees. because they just cheer on anything the CIA proposes to do. And in many cases, the CIA doesn't even bother to inform the committees what it's doing. The committees have to find these things out from the press. And so the short answer to your question, Kim, is yes, that's exactly what they're doing. They're using any means at their disposal to spy on American citizens and to allow foreign intelligence services to spy on American citizens on their own behalf. I agree with you that it is illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. It's unethical. In fact, it's even a violation of the NSA charter, which specifically says that NSA is forbidden under any circumstances to spy on American citizens. But it happens every single day in post 9/11 America.
Yeah. So with this serial law breaking going on and a new president in the White House, why don't you think that Trump is doing something about this? Why don't you think that, anyone new in charge, this new government, isn't going in and saying, hey, wow, you're doing all these things and this is all unlawful? How come no one is cracking down on this stuff?
I never believed in the idea, the notion of a deep state. Well, let me correct that. Sure, there's a deep state, sure. But I never believed in the notion that it controlled the modes of government until now.
Yeah.
And now I mean it's like not even deep anymore. It's out there.
It's the open deep state, right?
The open deep state,
for
right?
Everyone to see. That's exactly right.
It's like they're not even afraid to be identified as the deep state anymore.
And they don't even have to make an effort anymore because the media is so involved.
They're all lemmings. They're all lemmings, and they go right off the cliff with the lead lemming. I'm going to preface these comments by saying I think Donald Trump is a madman. I think he's unfit mentally, emotionally, and intellectually to be president. I think this is his election is one of the gravest mistakes that Americans have made in modern times. With that said, he believes that there's a deep state, and he believes that they're out to get him, in addition to being out there to get other people.
Well, they're showing the whole world that they're out to get him. I mean, what's going on with the mass leaking, with the liberal news media attacking him? I mean, I get what you're saying about him, but here's one important thing that I think has happened in the United States. More and more people are becoming aware of how they're constantly being lied to. They're becoming aware of government abuse. They're becoming aware that they're really just being used, that they're not electing politicians to serve them, but politicians only serve their own interests and the interests of their rich donors. So in Donald Trump, I believe Americans have seen an outsider who is not part of that establishment, who even amongst other rich people is not really welcome because of his attitude and his ego and his I'm doing it my way attitude, right? So in a way, his election was, I would say, a desperate effort by people, who see what's going on, to have someone completely outside of the political establishment to come in and to change something. He won on Drain the Swamp. He won on Lock Her Up. People want to have a president in the White House, even a character like Trump, who is going to go in and change all of this stuff. And it's so frustrating to see how easily the deep state is just manipulating everything. And I'm pretty sure if Trump doesn't get bold, if he doesn't expose the crimes that have been done by the deep state under Obama, the mass surveillance, the breaches of the constitutions, the mass breaches of law, if he doesn't drain the swamp, as he said, he'll be gone before the end of the year. Everything is building up to an event where he is being removed as president of the United States. And the longer he is inactive, his inaction is going to get people to agree with that and not, be part of the group that is going to fight against his removal. So I think, it's a great opportunity for the U.S. to have a change agent. Mm-hmm. Even a person like Trump, who, I agree with you, has an enormous ego, does things in a way that, you and I wouldn't do. But at the same time, he is a victim to the deep state, just like us. He is definitely right now a victim. And his opportunity is to go in there, find out everything that they've done, expose it, and use this law breaking to reform the intelligence community and the deep state and expose what Obama and his people have done to undermine the rights of their citizens. Because that in itself, I think, is the most powerful, heroic thing that he could do. No one would care anymore about his ego and about, how important it is for him to have won this election and for him to be president. If he did that, we could have a reset. We could have a restart of all of these institutions to be serving the American citizens without undermining the laws and undermining their rights and frankly taking their rights away more and more. Don't you agree that Trump could be that change agent simply because of him not being part of this establishment yet?
I actually do agree with that. The problem, I think, is that he has become so deeply mired in domestic problems of his own making. Witness this white supremacy insanity that we're going through right now, that it might be a problem. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. See, this is the problem. This is the problem with my friends on the left. I'm a third generation Democrat until my arrest, and I left the Democratic Party over this, and a lifelong progressive. Barack Obama should have been a legendary hero for all of us. And instead, Barack Obama was the one who took away our rights, our civil rights, our civil liberties, in many cases, our human rights. And so you're right, Kim, that at least on the international stage, Donald Trump can rehabilitate himself by giving us back our rights and standing up to the deep state that Obama nurtured and cultivated. Yeah, I believe that.
And that is. Sorry, go ahead, Lizzie.
I'm interested to know, how did it happen that Bush, who instituted the torture program, that your case was dropped under Bush, you said, but then was brought back, was reopened under Mr. Hope and Change Obama? Does this mean that Obama was just a figurehead? How is it that Obama, Mr. Hope and Change, became the grand persecutor of whistleblowers?
Well, I think that it's actually darker than the idea of Obama being a figurehead. And I'll give you two different answers. One is a quick one. There was a book that was published in 2013 called Double Down by Mark Halperin and John Heilemann, two noted political commentators. And in this book, President Obama sat for an interview. And he said two things that were really chilling to me. One, very matter-of-factly, he said in response to a question, "I never said I was a liberal." It's as though we were tricked into thinking that he was progressive. The other thing, he was talking about the drone program. And he said, "I never had any idea that I would be so good at killing people." Well, that's not something to brag about or to marvel over. I mean, look at George W. Bush's last month as president. In George W. Bush's last month as president, he took actions that resulted in the deaths of 2 people with the use of a drone. In Barack Obama's last month as president, He killed 424 people with drones. Like, how is that liberal? How is that progressive? The other thing is, and we've seen this through modern history in the States with inexperienced presidents. The CIA loves an inexperienced president.
Social engineering, John, because
Yes.
they can socially engineer him to do what they want.
That's exactly it. It's social engineering. They know that they can mold this guy into their own image. And so here you have a president who's just been elected with literally zero national security experience. He's elected but not yet inaugurated. And so they bring him into the fold. They give him access to the most closely held secrets. They show him the blue border reports, the black border reports that are 5 and 6 levels above top secret. And they say, Mr. President-elect, we want to tell you all the cool things we're doing overseas. Well, then they have him. They've recruited him. They've made him one of the guys. He's in the club now. And once he's in the club, he'll do anything they want.
Yeah.
Well, Trump's not in the club. He'll never.
They don't want him in the club. And
they don't want him because he's a loose cannon.
The deep state wanted to get Hillary to win more than anything because they know with her it would have been the next 4 years, the next 8 years, just like under Obama. She is complicit in all of it. They don't have to worry that any of their illegalities are ever going to come to light. She's just going to cover it up because she's part of this illegal conspiracy that they have going. And Trump is nothing more than a risk to them. They don't like him. They want him gone. And
Yes.
I don't think Trump is someone who can be socially engineered.
Yes.
You know, they prefer keeping him in the dark and telling him almost nothing because they are worried that if he understands what really happened in the United States under Obama, that he is going to stop that he's going to expose that and say, guys, what are you doing? You know, the people didn't sign up for that. They didn't vote us in so that you can do this stuff. And that's what they're worried about. And let me give you a very big example of that. Just before Obama left office, I don't know if you probably read that in the news, the NSA went to the FISA court, and the White House and the NSA admitted that they have been spying on Americans. And they didn't really provide any detail on how many, and they, as they usually do, make it sound like incidental and accidental. But they basically admitted that they acted unlawfully spying on Americans. And then on the next page, they're saying, but now that we know that we did that, we deleted everything. We just went into our databases, found everything that we captured that we shouldn't have, and we deleted it. And what did they delete? Hillary Clinton's emails from her private email server and everything else that has happened in the Obama administration that could come and haunt them. Because these emails, as you well know, as you know, an expert in the intelligence community, were hoovered up by the NSA spy systems automatically. You know, it doesn't even require an agent to do it by targeting her. That happened automatically because it was a private server. It was not a state email system. So they hoovered it all up. They have it in the Utah spy cloud. And then they went to FISA just before Obama is gone to get permission, or basically to tell the FISA court, we've now deleted all the stuff that we're not supposed to have. That's how they cover things up. I mean, it's incredible how openly they do it, you know. And for someone who understands how they work, when you read this stuff, you just go, well, why didn't the FISA court say, hey, hold on a minute, preserve this as evidence? Right. If you say you did this unlawfully, well, someone needs to investigate it. Someone needs to look at it. But you have these FISA court judges that really just rubber stamp everything the IC puts to them. And they are not interested in any kind of investigation because it makes themselves look bad.
Sure.
You know? But someone like Trump could appoint a special prosecutor to look into the mass constitution breaches of these spy agencies. He could, have Sessions do that in a heartbeat. That's what they are worried about. And what they are doing right now is try and get rid of as much of the evidence as they can, because if they fail in the coup d'etat of Donald Trump, if they can't remove him, they are risking that they will be seriously exposed. Because I believe that Donald Trump would be taking action if he had a full picture of what really went on during the Obama years.
I would agree with that. I think he does not have a full picture. Another thing to think of too is the CIA, the NSA, all the intelligence agencies are civil service agencies. People are there for 20, 25, 30, 35 years at a time. And so the leaders inside the CIA, with the exception of the director himself, everybody else, from the deputy director level all the way down, came of age in the Obama administration. They're all Obama holdovers. This is very much Barack Obama's CIA.
That's exactly right. And there are so many Obama loyalists still there, and they know what they have done. They know if ever there was a real investigation into their activities, they would all go to jail, or they should.
Oh, they should, without a doubt.
They are in cover-up mode, and they are trying still now to prevent this president because they are scared of him.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, and you can say whatever you want about Trump. That is a quality that he has and a potential that he has where I just haven't joined the group of people that said, Trump is horrible and this and that, because he, as crazy as it is our best hope to get something changed. Mm-hmm. Because he's on our side. He himself is exposed to this dirt.
It's true. It's true. And it's disappointing because they have so bottled him up politically. And again, a lot of this is of his own making because he does not have Washington experience. But they have so bottled him up politically that he's focused now solely on saving himself and his agenda and on domestic issues. When was the last time Donald Trump said anything about mass surveillance? I can't even remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only person who says something about it is Sean Hannity on Fox. He talks about the deep state all the time, and it's Trump's favorite program. So I'm pretty sure he's much more aware about the issues now than he was when he got elected. And, if I was Trump, and I put myself into his shoes, right? And I have all these leaks coming out. Hundreds of leaks. My transcripts of phone calls with foreign leaders. And then the intelligence community, which has only one purpose, is to protect my information, can't find and produce a single leaker, can't stop the leaking. I mean, how dumb do you have to be not to understand that it's them who's doing it? It's them who's doing it. No one is going to be found out. And it's because they don't like this president. They want to get rid of Trump at all costs. Mm-hmm. And, to me personally, I think there is an opportunity here. If this president understands that his enemy is also our enemy and is also the enemy of the American people and the American dream and the future of America. Once he understands it, and I'm thinking he's on the way to getting that, there is a real opportunity to change this thing.
I think that is a brilliant op-ed.
Yeah.
Because everything that you just said is true and important. And it's something that the American people are simply not focused on.
Yeah.
You're right. The deep state, the intelligence apparatus, the intelligence and the federal law enforcement apparatus are the enemies of the American people and the enemies of the American dream.
Yeah. And you know, the good thing is, even within those dire times where all these crimes are being committed, there are people like you with a moral compass, you know, who think ethics are something to cherish, who will work with WikiLeaks, with the media, to put these stories out there. And if there's one trend that is really encouraging, then it is the amount of people that are coming forward with information. You know, it is increasing. Snowden has opened the floodgates, and now everyone who is aware of these criminal acts, you know, has to ask themselves, their own conscience, you know, is this something I want to continue doing, or do I want to join forces with people like John, with people like Ed, with the CIA whistleblower who's giving WikiLeaks all the stuff, the Vault 7 stuff, the media ops that are coming out, everything that is coming out, right? These people right now have an opportunity to reform what's happening in the deep state. They have an opportunity to release as much as they can so that the president has a chance to point the finger at it and to change this. Yes. Because if we don't take this opportunity now, if it doesn't happen now, I don't think we will get another opportunity. There's now a global arms race in the intelligence world. Every country wants to have the kind of powers that the US has. It's going to be used more and more radically to cut down on dissent, to silence people that are not in the interest of a particular government. And, you know, now is the time. We really have to do something with urgency here. And as crazy as it sounds, Trump is probably the best guy to do it.
I'm going to put the dissenting opinion here. I am. So I think that your theory is brilliant. I actually think that you're correct that probably the only way out of the hole that he's in right now would be for Trump himself to blow the whistle, and for him to blow the whistle on the Obama government, on the pay-to-play of the Clinton Foundation, indict Clinton, indict Debbie Wasserman Schultz.
100%. And that's what he promised Americans. And if he doesn't do it, and the cries for impeachment are coming, it will come before the end of this year. If he doesn't do it, he'll be gone. No one will care about fighting for him if he doesn't deliver on those promises.
I think your theory is brilliant, and I genuinely hope that he takes that advice, that he has the strength and the integrity to take that advice. However, I've got a few doubts. First is that he is completely surrounded by generals, and that he's surrounded by generals who are complicit in a lot of what has happened, particularly in the wars of the last 15 years. And I think the reason he's being surrounded by those generals is for him to be taken into the fold. That's like plan B. Plan 1 is get rid of him, you know. Plan 2 is try to get him still onto their side. So that's the first thing that I would say. The second thing is I think that this is not just a left-right war or a deep state versus a people war. It's a class war. And when you look at the photos of Hillary Clinton and of Trump together, of which there are many, while he may not be an insider, he certainly walked in those circles for long enough. And there is a difference between the have and the have-nots in that sense. And he will side with his class against the majority of the people. So what I see is that it's more like competing mafia clans. It's like the Clinton clan is like a mafia, and Trump's crowd is like a mafia. And they're fighting it out and having their mafia war together within government. I also see that Trump is in charge of the police state. He has all of the police unions and agencies and everything rooting for him. And then Clinton If you look at, she was pushing TPP. TPP was signed onto by all the heads of the intelligence agencies. They all wanted it to pass. So Trump coming in and ditching the TPP basically on day one would have put him on their shit list as well from that point. So what we have now is the police state versus the intelligence agencies. And while Trump is leading the police state, Trump will never be for the people who are on the ground, because it is the police state who enforce the mechanisms of control above and over the people who are on the ground. So we have this weird conflict has created like this bipolar society almost that you see at the moment, where actually, to be honest with you, neither side is great. The police agencies have massive problems in corruption, racism, systemic corruption, systemic issues, oppression of peoples and of activists, and then the intelligence agencies are just like next level worst of all, like the stuff that they've been involved in, from war crimes to extraordinary renditions to torture to everything else. They are the worst of the worst. So now we have, like, would you like to support the system of domestic oppression, or would you like to support the system of international oppression? And that's the choice that's being sold to people. I also say that I'm completely disgusted with liberals. I come from an activist background. I'm still an activist to this day. I find it incredible that there are activists out there who have been targeted by the intelligence agencies, and their movements have been targeted by the intelligence agencies for the last 6 years and decades before that. They have been personally targeted and oppressed by Obama's administration and by Hillary Clinton, who are now saying, oh, the CIA is not that bad. Oh, the intelligence agencies aren't that bad. Actually, you know, they're trying to do a good thing getting rid of Trump. Yeah, I think we'll march with them. Everything's fine. You have people like @Funder on Twitter who literally says, I am a leader of the resistance. He is the funder for Hillary Clinton, literally the funder for the Democratic Party, and he claims to be an activist leading the resistance. His party has just spent the last 6 years that I've been an activist targeting and undermining and destroying the lives of the activists that they now claim to be marching with against Trump. So it is a complete and utter farce. And anybody who will get in bed with Hillary Clinton and her financial backers and the intelligence agencies and then call themselves an activist needs a wake-up call. If you are going to be an activist, at least be it on principle. But if you are marching alongside Hillary Clinton and her cronies, you are nothing but a people's front for the Clinton mafia. So that's my 2 cents. And on the other side, if you are marching with the National Front and David Duke, well, don't be surprised that people are calling you a Nazi or a racist, because you've got no business marching with those people and calling yourself an activist either. And I'm sure I will lose a lot of friends by pointing this out, but what I'm saying is that both sides are corrupt.
Isn't that what Trump said? Isn't that what Trump said?
Neither side has the moral high ground at all.
Yeah.
Now, I am aware that there are very legitimate activist organizations who are smart enough to not have fallen for the left versus right divide versus Clinton versus Trump, intelligence agencies versus police agencies. That is the anti-war movement. That is the legitimate peace protesters. They do not side with either the left or the right. And they are genuinely working for peace for the planet. They want to shut down the nukes. They want to shut down the torture. They want to shut down the extraordinary renditions. They're fighting to shut down the drone programs. And you don't hear those people going, yeah, let's go punch a Nazi. And you don't hear them going, oh, let's, kill the liberals. They're not starting militias. They are genuinely involved in a movement for peace. Those are the sane people. Those are the people who we need to support. worldbeyondwar.org. Go and check them out. These are the real activists, the activists who are not aligned with either side. These are the people who we should support. So that's my 2 cents on that. Now, just to switch topics on you really quickly, John, I want to just talk about quickly sanctioned leaks versus unsanctioned leaks, because it seems to me that people like you get in a lot of trouble for telling the truth. But then we have people like, well, Bob Woodward was specifically who I wanted to talk about. Bob Woodward is a very, very famous political author, and he has written books about a series of American presidents. And I'm just quickly going to share my screen and show you something that I have here on Twitter. It's from March of this year. It's a quote from Bob Woodward. And the quote says, "I have had presidents in Republican and Democrat administrations provide information that is technically classified. Bill," he's talking to Bill O'Reilly, "Bill, you know that happens all of the time." And that's Bob Woodward. Now, Bob Woodward wrote several books about Bush's wars and also a book about Obama. When I read those books, there was a few things in them that I literally had my mouth hanging open. I actually sent these to Glenn Greenwald, a few quotes a few years back, and a few other people, because they really shocked me. So the first thing that really shocked me is the names of the programs, CIA programs, names of systems, details of technical systems, that the frameworks by which military operations are conducted in Afghanistan. You can find these in these books. You can find operational details. You can find very specific testimony from even named people and unnamed sources about things that are happening inside the agencies. And these books sell millions of copies and end up on the New York Times bestsellers list. And also, as he said himself, he's received technically classified information from presidents on both sides. But then there was also a story in there that really shocked me. There's two stories that really shocked me. One was they were talking about how the CIA wanted to get an Afghan warlord onto their side. So they went and offered him a cash bribe of however much money. And the warlord said, "No, thank you. I don't want to accept the money." And so the CIA said, "Well, what should we do about that?" "I know, we'll drop a 50,000 pound bomb outside his compound, and then we'll go back to him the next day and offer him less money." So they dropped a 50,000 pound bomb outside his compound, which, I mean, you might have some idea of how much it costs to buy a 50,000 pound bomb. I have no idea. I just think it's morally reprehensible that they would do such a thing. Sure enough, they went back to him afterwards and offered him half the cash. He accepted the deal. So this is the kind of thing that seems to be going on within these agencies, and that they think is okay for them to expend munitions purchased on public dollars to scare the shit out of people so that they will accept less bribe money. The second story from Bob Woodward's books, which I found absolutely unbelievable, was a story in Iraq. I believe it was somewhere around the Kurdish border. And they were talking about how they had a CIA asset inside this building, this compound where these bad guys were. And the CIA asset was giving them information from within. And so they went to blow up the compound, but they said to themselves, well, we better not tell our asset that we're going to blow up the compound that he's in case it exposes us somehow. So we'll just blow it up with him in it. And that's what they did. They leveled the place and killed their own asset. And I could not believe they would write about this. First of all, that they'd do it. Second of all, that they would write about it in a Bob Woodward New York Times bestseller. So I'd like to know what do you have to say about this manifestation of these like horrific war stories and this highly classified information in books that sell millions of copies and make millions of dollars, whereas you tell the world that war crimes have been committed and you end up in jail. Why is Bob Woodward not in jail? You're muted, John. John, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm amused that you're surprised by any of this. The CIA has been doing these kinds of things since its creation in 1947. Let me tell you a short anecdote, too. After the Abu Zubaydah capture, I told you I was promoted and named executive assistant to the deputy director. I had a lovely private office with brand new, expensive furniture. And I was enjoying my office and sitting there like this one day, and I happened to be turned and looking past the secretary into the hallway. I had a direct line of sight into the hallway. And as I'm sitting there like this looking, Bob Woodward walks past the door without a security a security escort. And I said to the secretary, was that Bob Woodward that just walked past the door from the Washington Post? And she said, yeah. I said, what in the world is Bob Woodward doing walking the halls? And she said, oh, you didn't see the memo? The director gave him free access and we're all ordered to cooperate with him. And I thought, man, so that's how the game is played. When you want to get the official story out there, you can leak to your heart's content because it makes the CIA look good, it makes the White House look good, and it makes the Pentagon look good. And that's what they want. At the same time, the White House and its employees are the most prolific leakers in all of government. They leak for a variety of reasons. They leak to make the president look good. They leak to make him look strong. They leak to create trial balloons just to see what the public reaction would be to something, to some policy change or nomination that they're considering. We also need to remember that there's a difference between leaking and whistleblowing. Whistleblowing is bringing to light any evidence of waste, fraud, abuse, illegality, or threats to the public health or public safety. Leaking is leaking. And people leak for a variety of reasons. They leak to make themselves seem important. They leak to help to quench this need for the thrill of leaking or a thrill of being in contact with a reporter. Sometimes they'll leak for revenge. Maybe they don't like a president or a boss, or they've been passed over for promotion, and they'll leak just to get revenge on whoever it is they believe wronged them. But that's not whistleblowing. It's the whistleblowers that the administration is afraid of, because it's the whistleblowers who are the truth tellers. That's what they're worried about. They don't want the American people to know the truth about these programs, because these programs, most of them are patently illegal, and in many cases are even violations of international law. That's what they're afraid of. So yeah, you know, I read all those books too. I've read every book that Bob Woodward's written. I read Jane Mayer's brilliant books, and they are chock full of classified information. Those books would fall apart if they didn't have classified information in them. But that's classified information that has come as a result of official leaks.
State sanctioned.
Absolutely.
Right. So you talk about the media being important for us to reach, but so often they work in concert to promote war.
Yes.
And to suppress dissent. So to what extent were the rank and file CIA personnel aware of their agency having infiltrated the news media? I mean, we've heard about this, you know, from Mockingbird onwards. For decades, we've heard about this. There's been a variety too of releases on WikiLeaks about this topic. So is this known within the agency that the CIA has media cutouts, and what is the information flow from the agency to media channels?
Well, a lot of that is actually classified. I probably shouldn't get into specifics, but you know, Operation Mockingbird really did end, at least as it was targeting American journalists. But as you might imagine, foreign journalists all around the world are targeted. That's just the nature of intelligence and the nature of journalism, and it's not specific to the CIA. Every intelligence service does that kind of thing, because that's how you control the debate. It's just a natural thing to do. So yeah, sure. I mean, every CIA officer knows the history of Operation Mockingbird. Every CIA officer knows that somewhere in the world, journalists are on the CIA payroll, placing stories that the CIA wants to be placed. That's just intelligence. That's the way it is.
Or it goes even further. The CIA invests into an entrepreneur $600 million, and then have that entrepreneur buy the Washington Post and directly influence what the Washington Post is talking about. I mean, the Washington Post has become such a cover-up organization for all of these crimes. You might recall recently some emails were published where, you know, things came out about the Hillary campaign and stuff, and then the reporters would write to Hillary, to the people in her campaign, and say, we're really sorry that we have to ask this stuff, kind of bowing down and saying, we don't like to report, but we have to ask some questions. And that's the culture today, that these large media organizations, they are all run by money. And in times where advertising income evaporates and they don't really do as well as they did before the internet, they are trying to find ways to survive. Mm-hmm. And part of survival is to partner with companies, with powerful people that will keep them afloat. And when Trump says the failing, almost broke New York Times, he's absolutely right. They don't even know how they're going to have enough money next year to pay all their staff. So, they're working with people that have a certain agenda, and they feed them and keep them alive. And a lot of that, I believe, is going to come out in future WikiLeaks releases called Media Ops. And it's also showing how deeply the CIA and other agencies have infiltrated the news media. And not just that, it's one has to wonder, how does the CIA and the NSA have all these backdoors? They don't have them into our technologies and our devices because they sit like a hacker would at home and they try and find the backdoors. They try and find the vulnerabilities in the software. They plant it themselves. That is the way they're doing it now. They have their own people within Microsoft, within Apple, within Google, implementing into the source code, often without the knowledge of these corporations, implementing backdoors that allow these spy agencies later to turn these devices into open mics, into open cameras. And that's the scary stuff. The spy agencies went from, well, how can we take advantage of what's out there and make it work for us, to let's make it work for us. Let's put our own people in there and let's manipulate everything. And this is the world we're living in. If you read a news story on the New York Times or Washington Post, you have to ask yourself, is this someone who is a part of the media ops program of the deep state? When you install your Windows software or you boot up your iPhone, you have to wonder, how many people does it actually take to have a backdoor to turn my phone into an open mic? It's really just one person, one lead developer who puts a piece of code into this enormous universe of code that will give me another backdoor. And they planned hundreds of those. And by doing it, they are not only undermining our trust in the media and into these technology companies, but they are giving the enemy a powerful tool to strike against us, because these vulnerabilities that have been created, they leak somehow, like the entire NSA hacking toolkit that was leaked not too long ago. And now the enemy has that. Organized crime has that. Countries that are not friends of the US at all have access to that. And now they can use it to harm American citizens. And this is, if Trump would understand that, the significance, the magnitude of how they are weakening the security structure of the United States by doing this stuff, if he would understand that, I think he is the one guy who we can hope will do something about it, But that's what's going on. I mean, that is how everything is being manipulated now. And I know that with firsthand experience from my case and discovery that we had, and the research that I've done, and I have a data security background, so I understand very well how they are doing it. And, it is very important that more and more people come forward and release the programs. If you follow the Vault 7 releases, every week or two, Julian lets another document come out. You know, it's incredible the amount of backdoors that they have now into our daily lives. Every internet router is, you know, an open door to them. Every operating system, no matter if it's Windows, Linux, or, you know, Macintosh, every mobile phone from every manufacturer, no matter what operating system they use, it's ridiculous. Who gave them the right to do that? You know, nobody signed up for that. If the American people, you know, would really understand what's going on and were asked if they accept that, if they agree with that, they would say no. If they were asked to vote in a president who's going to turn that shit off, they will vote for him.
Right.
That's exactly right. And as crazy as this may sound, Trump might be our best hope, you know? But here's in reality, okay, I mean, there are really just three options for him. Number one, he becomes an ally and he works with them and he allows them to social engineer him into compliance like they have done with Obama and every president after Kennedy, okay? That's number one. Number two, he's going to war. There will be some bigger news event that is just going to quiet down everything else. They will try and get him engaged in some kind of war. This whole bombing of the Syrian airfield, which dominated the news for a week, that was really just, give me a breather. Yes. I need some space, you know. And the third option, and that is, you know, the Kennedy option, is just if they can't make it work with him and force him into compliance, you know, they will either kill him or, you know, if impeachment doesn't work, they will get rid of him. You know, so if I was Trump, my best option would be to really expose what is happening here, to bring all these crimes to light, and to shut these things down and reform those agencies. And he will become a hero for generations. And all the young people that are following all this stuff, that are fed up with fake news, that know what's going on, you know, he's going to become the hero, no matter left or right. You know, he can do what's right, the right thing. And that is the opportunity, and that's why I supported him, because I saw, just like Brexit, that's not what the establishment wants. The establishment wanted to stay in the European Union. Mm-hmm. The establishment didn't want Trump to win. They don't want these forces that interfere with their globalist agenda and you know, the plans that they have. So that's why I supported him, because he is a punishment for those who have done this to the world for the last few decades, you know?
My only disappointment with him in that respect, though, was his appointment of Michael Pompeo as the CIA director. Because Pompeo is he's a completely establishment man. He's a West Point graduate. He was a conservative Republican congressman from Kansas. He was on the House Intelligence Committee. We're not going to get any outside the box thinking from the likes of Mike Pompeo. And then to make matters worse, when Pompeo became director, rather than pulling his deputy director from, let's say, the Republican staff on the committee, he named Gina Haspel, the CIA's deputy director. Gina Haspel, who was one of the original creators of the CIA's torture program. So that was a disappointment to me, because he could have made a bold nomination, which would have really been a very important statement to the establishment, and he didn't.
But you know what the problem is? He doesn't know. He doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't know what you know or I know or Julian knows.
Yeah, that's
true. He reads it in the news, and then he gets, you know, a certain percentage of it, but he doesn't really understand it. I mean, his age is, he is not an internet guy. He is not a technology guy. You know, his mind is not structured to understand these things unless someone who he can trust, who understands these things, can talk to him and explain it to him and point him at evidence and show him what's really happening. That is the biggest problem. But, you know, there are people out there, there are voices out there that he listens to that are pointing these things out to him. And that's where the opportunity is. Because if he gets it, that's what I believe. If he gets what's going on, he will want to do something about it. He will not be complicit in this type of stuff. Mm-hmm. That is my personal belief, and I know, you know, a lot of people might disagree. But when I saw Trump, you know, having a chance to become the president, and how the establishment had an allergic reaction to him, I knew that he could be the guy, you know? He could be the guy to blow this all open and to reform it all. And it's a huge opportunity for him to make history, you know? Yeah. Because what's happening right now in the United States is not in the service of the American people. This is all about money, about economic control. You know, this is not about our rights, our freedoms. This is not about making America great again or the American dream. It's all about selfish commercial agendas. Mm-hmm. You know, and the people are being used, and their rights are being trampled on, and the laws being broken on a daily serial basis. And that needs to stop. And it will not stop if people like you and I and Julian and Edward and all the other truth tellers out there are putting it out there for everyone to understand. And you know what? The people who get it, our numbers are growing. You can see it in the voting behavior already. You can see it. You know, people get it. They want change. Obama got voted in for change and hope and then disappointed everyone. If Trump does it again, the next time someone, a complete outsider, neither with the Democrats or the Republicans, is going to get a boost. There will be someone coming out of midfield, out of nowhere, where people will make an investment of faith and trust and get that guy in, simply because they are fed up with the lies and with the crimes the government is committing at their expense. You know, so it's just a matter of time. As long as we keep talking and we're building this momentum and we're organizing and we're talking about it, you know, sooner or later, this whole thing is going to fall apart. And that is their biggest fear, you know. That's why they fear you. That's why they wanted to put you in jail for a decade, because, you know, people like you can change the whole game for them. They understand that.
There's a couple of things I just want to say. One is, that's a really good call about Gina Halperin. I might be mispronouncing her name. She's also associated with the Saudis. And we saw Trump go straight to Saudi Arabia and touch the orb and do the sword dance and the whole rigmarole. And that's told us a lot, you know, the whole christening of the Saudi anti-terrorist center, when of course the Saudis are behind a lot of the terrorism in the world. So he definitely has people around him who are trying to subvert him for the establishment interest. Also, we cannot ignore that Betty DeVos, again, I might be mispronouncing her name, is the sister of Eric Prince, who is also at Trump's table. Eric Prince is owned Blackwater, and which has had a few name changes since then. He is the king of mercenary armies in all of the war zones across the world, and also attempting to make money on the militarization of the domestic police forces in America. So once again, I am with you, Kim, that I would love Trump to be the one, be the Neo, you know, to like blow it all open, get the truth out there and change the system. But the people who are around him are the same toxic militarists that have been involved in previous administrations.
You know, I might be completely wrong and completely naive about it, but, you know, when I see an opportunity, you know, when I see even a 10% chance that by them cornering him and alienating him and putting him in a situation where it's, you know, his downfall or theirs, that he might do the right thing, that he might understand how he can escape this and how he can put them on the spot, you know? And if he does that, he might actually survive all of this deep state collusion to get him out. And if he does, you know, he might actually become a hero. Who knows? I mean, Trump is definitely someone who would love to be everybody's hero. He loves to be loved, okay? So if you watch this, Donald, if you want to be loved, cut this crime down, you know, drain the swamp, do what you promised everyone. That's what we want, what the whole world is waiting for. That is what we hoped for when Obama told us about the change, you know? This is your opportunity. Don't be like everyone else. Don't be a loser of the deep state, you know? Do your own thing and be your own man and beat them down with us, with our help, right?
Right.
Let's go.
Well,
Right.
you're right that they hate him. There's absolutely no doubt about that. They have used the entire mass media to try to make everyone else hate him as well. So he's definitely a victim in that sense and being persecuted by them in that sense. They do say the truth will set you free. Hopefully he will find it within himself to tell the truth on an epic, never before seen scale. I do hope that. And actually, then his only real safety mechanism would be the support of the public. Okay, I just want to address a concern that I have really quickly about some of the comments.
Can I say one more thing, Susan?
Oh, go ahead.
The first step that I would take if I was Donald Trump would be to pardon Julian Assange.
Yes.
To end the persecution against him and WikiLeaks, and to send a strong message that, you know, truth tellers are not locked up or terrorized with some fake charges. You know, if he were to do that, that would be a strong signal. And I think it would benefit him greatly because Julian has a lot of information that could be very helpful to his presidency.
Here. WikiLeaks has changed everything. They've changed the media landscape, the political landscape. They have given people, I think John Pilger, I keep quoting John Pilger, who says that WikiLeaks restored honor to journalism. They've restored integrity to journalism. They've raised the bar for journalists around the world. I cannot imagine what the world would be like without them, or what it would have been like without them, how much further we would have devolved as a society without them. So they are of critical importance and absolutely, I mean, you can see here too, I have my Courage t-shirt on. I want you to support the Courage Foundation because they support the whistleblowers that have worked with WikiLeaks and or just made significant contributions to the historical record. So please, if you can, donate to WikiLeaks at wikileaks.org/donate and to the Courage Foundation at couragefound.org. These organizations are the lifeblood of truth in our society and the real media, and they hold both the media and governments to account. So please do support them. Okay, I just want to move on quickly. There is a couple of accounts I actually follow and fairly regularly retweet who have been making disparagements about John because they are saying, how many people has John been a part of torturing? How many people has John been complicit and the oppression of? And I would just like to make this point to you guys now, and this is an important one that I don't want you to forget. The question is not how many people has John been complicit in torturing. The question is how many people have not been tortured as a result of John doing the right thing and stepping up and telling the entire world what was going on. You can sit here and blame the man for his past, or you can look at the choice that he made and what we have all learned as a result. This is someone on our stream who a president of the United States has had to stand up and be accountable in press conferences based on the revelations that John has made. When Obama said, oh, we tortured some folks and had to account for what they were doing, it was because of John's disclosure. So rather than looking at what John did in the past, you guys need to look at the impact of what his disclosures had and see the change that has happened since. Because you can be damn sure that there are CIA torturers and interrogators who have had to think twice about what they were doing when they were doing it because of John stepping up And you can also be damn sure that there'll be other whistleblowers that will come forward because of John. He's already explained to you about his letter that he wrote to Snowden and what an impact that had on Snowden. The Snowden revelations may have got as much air as they have gotten because of people like John. So are you going to say to Edward Snowden, how many people did you spy on? How many people did you target, you know, when you're an NSA employee? Or are you going to say, holy shit, Edward Snowden, you have changed the world with your releases? How many NSA agents are sitting at their desk looking at targets like I was a target in New Zealand, like Kim was a target in New Zealand? They used to spy on me through my cameras. They used to spy on my kids in my house. How many NSA employees are sitting there looking at targets like us, activists, journalists, entrepreneurs, tech visionaries, and thinking, I shouldn't be doing this. This is wrong. This is disgusting. We've already got the Reality Winner case. There's many other cases. These whistleblowers influence millions of people. So do not sit there and ask questions about how many people did John torture. Ask how many CIA torturers are shitting themselves now about what they are doing because of the disclosures that John has made.
Yeah, but John has made clear. John has made clear that he did. John has made already clear that he didn't torture anybody. That when he was asked, that he refused to be a part of that. So to answer that question more clearly, John has not been involved in any kind of torture. Is that right, John?
That's right, Kim. Thank you. Yeah, I've never, ever been involved in any kind of torture, not even indirectly. So, you know, so many people have said so many ridiculous things about me over the years. I've developed a very thick skin. What I object to, what really makes me sad is the ignorance of people who make comments without having even educated themselves in the most basic way on these issues or on my own history. My entire life is out there on the internet, available for anybody who cares. So to ask a stupid question like that, it's just very sad.
And often you need to keep in mind that spy agencies have their own armadas of online trolls.
Of trolls.
Exactly. That are just doing this stuff on purpose, misinformation all the time. I mean, it's hilarious how openly that can be found out. And I have to say that most of the followers that criticize me on Twitter surprisingly always have less than 100 followers. You know, it's the little shits that make the loudest noise, and one has to wonder why that is, because people, you know, in the statistics that I have reviewed, you know, of hate speech online, people who have more than 1,000 followers and you know who they are, they usually don't talk this kind of shit. You know, it's mainly the small accounts that, you know, it's really hard to tell, well, who is this person? What has he actually tweeted about? Who's just retweeting every now and then, and the rest is just hate speech against some people. You know, a lot of it is just organized. It's an effort to undermine your credibility or the credibility of whistleblowers in general.
That is true, and that certainly happens, and we see that those tactics being employed against all of the legitimate activists and activist movements. The people who I was calling out specifically on this stream, I won't name them, but they are anti-war activists. And I think what they're attempting to do is to present John, to indict John on the basis of the activities of the CIA as a whole, to which I say to them, you do not blame the whistleblower for the system that he blew the whistle on. Simple.
Thank you.
Respect the whistleblower. And I'll back you until the end of time, John, because when you speak out and you inform the public, you are worthy of our respect and you're worthy of our thanks. So I know it's like God knows what time in the morning for you, and I know you must be so exhausted. I also know that there are hundreds of people who've been asking questions on social media. So I'm going to ask Blake now, one of our awesome media team members, to relay to you just a couple of the best questions, Blake, and we'll have John answer them, and then we'll let him go and get some sleep. Hi, Blake.
Hey. So I'd like to start with Jenny Lynn, because She's donated last time and this time on the YouTube.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for that.
So she asked, she wants to know what else John witnessed in the CIA.
Wow. You know, I reported, I have to be extremely careful with this. The threat that I made was not idle. And so when I made that threat through my attorneys, I then went to the Senate Intelligence Committee and reported it to the overseers. It had to do with financial crimes. But I apologize that I can't be more specific, but I should probably leave it at that, just to protect myself.
Very cool. East Slider asks, John, the CIA drug trade didn't suddenly end under Obama. We know the gun is being privatized. Who's handling the drugs?
Well, let me tell you a short anecdote from my time on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee staff. And I'm going to preface this by saying that this is unclassified because at the time that this happened, I did not have a security clearance, nor did I have access to classified information. In 2011, I took a trip to Afghanistan for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I was doing research for a paper on the heroin poppy trade in Afghanistan. And I flew to Lashkar Gah, which is a city, a town, a village, whatever. It's a village in Helmand province, and it's the epicenter of the Afghan heroin trade. And I asked a poppy farmer a very naive question. I said, why, instead of growing heroin poppy, why don't you grow crops that have 2 growing seasons? Why don't you grow things like onions or tomatoes or pomegranates or winter wheat? And he was exasperated and he exhaled and said, you know, the CIA told me in 2001 that if I told them where the Arabs were, I could grow all the poppy I wanted. And now you come here and you tell me I can't grow poppy? And I said, did the CIA tell you you could grow poppy? And as soon as I asked that question, my military handler ended the interview. And that was the last I was able to say. I returned to Washington and I mentioned this to my boss at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And he shook his head and he said, there's no way you're going to write a paper and say that. And that was the end of it. So my own educated guess is that the CIA's involvement, whether it's direct or indirect, with drugs has never ended.
Can I just ask a really naive question, please? What exactly is a military handler? Why did you have one? Is this a mandatory thing or just for a certain rank? Or
well, no, because Afghanistan is a war zone. The only way to get from point A to point B is on a military aircraft. And so Lashkar Gah, like many of the outlying posts, their State Department posts, they're only accessible by helicopter. And so if I want to go from Kabul or from Bagram Air Base to Lashkar Gah or to anywhere else in the country, I mean, you can't just get in a car and drive. You have to be flown by military aircraft. And so that was it.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, Blake.
Let's see. Jeremy Walker asks, does Kim.com and John have a dead man switch on their info?
I'll give you the easy answer for myself is I'm too stupid to even figure out how to do a dead man switch. So my answer is no.
I never had one. And one of the justifications for the raid was that the FBI told the New Zealand police that I had a doomsday device, and if I would push the button, it would delete over 2,000 servers around the world containing all of Mega Upload's data. And no evidence has ever been provided of any of that. It was a complete fabrication, and I still don't have any such device. I'm an open book. I don't even mind when I write my messages to, numerous people that I'm working with, that they are all aware of what I'm doing, because I like them to see that I'm fighting them actively. I like them to understand that I'm not scared of them, that I will continue my fight. And even though privacy is very important, when you do what I do, it's very difficult. The effort that is required to keep your communications private when you are watched by so many people that are interested in you, the effort just becomes too big. So I've just said, let my people in the NSA and in the CIA and at the GCSB that are used to living the life of others, let them live my life, and I'm trying my best to entertain them and to show them my fighting spirit and that they can't break me. So, for me personally, I made the fact that I have no privacy anymore work. I do not recommend it for, most people, because it's not the right thing. You shouldn't have to live in a world where you know that everything you do is being scrutinized. But I made it work for myself.
If Donald Trump were sitting in front of you right now, what would your elevator pitch for granting your pardon be from MWD 5037, who is also a donator?
Well, let me start with that. I would say, first of all, don't pardon me, because I'm just going to win my case outright, okay? I have that covered. I have brilliant lawyers. I've done nothing wrong. I'm going to beat them. Even though John warned me that they're going to kill me, I'm going to give them one hell of a fight. And if they ultimately succeed in killing me, everyone is going to know that it is a completely corrupt case. I will make sure of that. But Trump, you should pardon Julian Assange. You should pardon WikiLeaks, because without Julian Assange, you wouldn't be president of the United States right now. And without him, we wouldn't know about all of these government intrusions into our lives, about the illegal conduct around the world. And you can't stand for that. You can't be part of that. You can't become complicit in these mass crimes that are being committed around the world. I do believe that you have the best interest of the American people at heart. I do believe that you want to do the right thing to make America great again. And the deep state is one big obstacle to making that happen, because everything that they are doing is damaging the United States on the international stage, is damaging technology companies that are being undermined to backdoor them, is damaging the human rights of your voters. So by pardoning Julian Assange, you would do the first step in the right direction. And then hopefully the information that Julian can provide you, or a special prosecutor appointed by your attorney general, is going to allow you to reform the deep state and to investigate all the crimes that were committed during the Obama years.
I actually do have an elevator pitch, but more than an elevator pitch. I've got a letter. It's here in front of me on my computer, signed by 77 former CIA officers asking President Obama to pardon me for a number of reasons. I mean, they're kind of obvious. We talked about them tonight. That didn't happen. My goal was to get in front of Vice President Biden by the end of the administration and to ask Biden to go to bat for me, because Biden was one of only 5 senators, only 2 of whom are still living, who voted against enactment of the Intelligence Identities Protection Act, which is what I was convicted of violating. Through the support of the Greek American community here in the United States, which is very strong. They've been standing shoulder to shoulder with me for years. We did get in front of Vice President Biden 4 days before the end of the Obama administration. And Biden agreed to go to the president with one of these Greek American businessmen and argue my case. That Greek American businessman telephoned me at midnight after he had walked out of the White House. And he said, "John, you would have been so proud of Vice President Biden." He said he argued your case for 10 minutes and went to the mat for you, asking the president to pardon you. And in the end, he said the president looked at us and said, "Guys, I'm just not going to do this. It's either him or it's Manning." And Manning got 35 years. And that was the end of it. With that said, I have not been reluctant in any way to criticize Barack Obama in the media, whether it's the progressive media or the right-wing media. And I've been able to strike up something of a nascent relationship with Roger Stone, who is a notorious figure on the right, but at the same time very close to President Trump. And I've asked Roger Stone to help me. I don't know if he will. He said he would, but I don't know if he will. And I'm hoping for the best. I'm eligible to apply for a pardon again in a year, and I'm going to do it. And we'll see what happens.
Victor asks about Mexico. Thousands of journalists working about gov corruption are being killed.
Yeah. What about them?
What's the question, Blake?
That's basic. He's basically asking your thoughts.
I think the drug cartels are a real threat on both sides of the border. I think it is the drug cartels doing it. To the best of my knowledge and understanding, there's no connection between the CIA and the Mexican cartels. If anything, the CIA is working with DEA against the cartels, but it's really not my area of expertise, to tell you the truth.
Oh, last one, Blake.
Okay, from Elizabeth Muller. How can these private sect groups attack people legally? Why are more spy agencies not exposed? What if we create a crowdsourced funds for whistleblowers leaks to expose these?
I think that's a great idea. I think that The Intercept kind of sort of tried to do something similar. I think that they're generally bad at it. And I think also that they have hired a lot of the wrong people. Matthew Cole being the most wrong person to hire. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. I think we do need a crowdsourced, independent voice supporting whistleblowers. There are a couple of NGOs here in Washington, the Government Accountability Project, the Project on Government Oversight. There are a couple. The National Whistleblower Defense Center. Brad Birkenfeld, who is the great UBS banking whistleblower, and who won a government settlement or a settlement against the federal government here in the States for $104 million, has decided to use his own money to set up something like this to protect whistleblowers, and most importantly, to help defer the legal defense costs of whistleblowers. I think that is critically important and very generous, and something probably we should be focusing on.
Cool.
Awesome.
Just quickly before we let you go, John, I know you have a book out. I haven't read it yet, and I would really love to read it. I struggle to get my hands on English books here, actually, in Russia. So feel free to send me one if you would like.
I'd be very happy to.
That would make me very happy. I have got a little collection of cool books here that people have sent me, and I'm very grateful for.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's Doing Time Like a Spy: How the CIA Taught Me to Survive and Thrive in Prison.
And how did they teach you? Give us a quick rundown.
Well, they taught us these 20 life lessons in training that, you know, well, some were important, some were tongue-in-cheek, and they all turned out to be important in prison. Things like recruit spies to steal secrets or anything else you need. Admit nothing, deny everything, make counter-accusations. If calm is not to your benefit, chaos is your friend. You know, I say in the book that prison is a combination of 7th grade, Lord of the Flies, and a mental institution. And so you're the only one with any sanity. 85% of American prisoners suffer from some sort of mental illness. So it's up to you to rely on these life lessons to keep yourself safe and to keep yourself at the top of the prison heap.
Wow, and you obviously made it out in pretty good condition considering.
I think I did.
What you were saying earlier,
very insightful, and those rules apply to everything that spies do, right? Isn't it?
Absolutely.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely everything.
Hey, I would have one last question to you, John. If the president would call you to meet with you and ask you for your opinion, how you think things can be changed, how you would reform the intelligence community, what would you say to him?
I think I would say, well, this is just sort of the quick answer. I've given this a lot of thought. The quick answer is that the CIA's counterterrorism center has to be dismantled, because it has become not just a counterterrorism center, but a counter-human rights center. And crimes against humanity are committed there. In addition, we need real oversight, not pretend oversight, not paper oversight, but real oversight. And we have to have human rights attorneys and human rights activists that are doing this oversight. The law is for everybody. We're a nation of laws. We're a nation that's supposed to have a living and breathing constitution. That doesn't mean that we follow the laws when the laws suit our political purpose. We have to follow the laws whether we like it or not. That also means that our enemies get the protection of those laws. Our enemies, if they've committed crimes against us, have their right to a day in court. They have their right to face their accusers in a court of law, and they have a right to an attorney to defend their interests. We've not given them those rights. We've violated the Constitution, and it's inexcusable. So that's what I would urge him to do. We need real restructuring that's never been done before.
And how far do you think the deep state would go to prevent that from happening?
I think the deep state would do virtually anything to prevent that from happening. Virtually anything. Yeah, unfortunately.
It is so important what you said about the CTC, because those guys, like, they are doing so much of this under the banner of terrorism, but it's not terrorists that they're going after. They are going after activists. They are going after journalists. They are going after people with political opinions. They are going after the tech entrepreneurs and the innovators. Anybody who is a commercial threat to them, they're going after. Snowden is completely right when he says that the spying is economic. And the spying is, I think you alluded to it earlier, John, the spying is about control and power, and that is economic control and power as much as anything else.
And I'm the best example of that. I'm not a terrorist. I don't even work with terrorists. I don't know terrorists. I've never even been remotely any kind of national security threat. All I do is play video games and innovate cool tech. And yet here I am, the deep state shutting me down, GCSB, NSA, all spying on me. I'm being prosecuted in the same court with the same prosecutors as Julian Assange and Edward Snowden. Copyright. That's how far
really
this is
going. Is it? And this is the thing, it was never about copyright. What it was about is that they have a monopoly control on these industries, and your innovation threatened that because you were pushing the boundaries of tech and innovation. You were changing the game.
Well, the reality is I controlled.
They couldn't handle that.
I controlled through my companies 4% of the global internet traffic that was outside the reach of the US government. And I mean, it's one of many factors, right? But who's controlling that market share now? It's US companies that took that over. It's the Google Drives, the Dropboxes that benefited from Mega Upload being shut down. But again, like I alluded last time, the main reason I think why I became a target is because I became a donor to WikiLeaks, and everything else just fell into place. But you know, the big lesson here of my case is it's not about terrorism at all. It is about anyone who is of interest to them, no matter if it's terrorism or not. They will destroy you. You know, they will just use the power that they have and abuse the power that they have to shut you down. You don't have to be a terrorist to be targeted by these powerful methods, you know. And it's so important that I use the courts here in New Zealand to crack all of this open. You know, my case is one of the very few rare cases where an individual in a jurisdiction that is not yet completely eroded and corrupt, but on the way to it. Over here in New Zealand, with my case, I might be able to crack right into you know, how they have abused their power and these powerful tools to go against a tech guy, you know, who's building websites. And that will hopefully lead to a much broader understanding how it's not about fighting terrorism. You know, it's not at all. It's about controlling us.
Totally. Okay, John, do you want to just give the last 2 minutes of whatever messages you'd like to get out to people, and then we'll let you go to bed. I'm going to keep Kim with me because we'll continue talking about some party stuff and the bill.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to tell any would-be whistleblowers out there that you're not alone. You think you're alone, and the government certainly wants you to think you're alone, but you're not. There's an entire community out there of people who love you and who will support you and stand with you. It's a tough decision to make, and there are very severe consequences, personally, professionally, and financially, as I said, but you are not alone. And you know in your heart what the right thing to do is. Think about it, hire an attorney before you blow the whistle, but do it. Thanks for listening to me tonight.
Hey, thank you so much, John. This was incredible. It was nice to meet you for the first time. And
pleasure's all mine.
You know, you've touched me in a big way with all of the incredible things that you've said. So thank you very much. And I hope I see you again.
I'm looking forward to that, and very, very best of luck.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was really cool and really special. Okay, Kim, I've got a question for you that someone has asked in the chat. It's a big topic, and I think it's one that you'll have a lot to say on. They've asked to Kim and Suzie, will the rise of artificial intelligence, AI, allow the deep state to genuinely exploit it all as they plan to do? If so, how far along are they, how serious is the threat and what will it mean for us?
Well, I agree with Elon Musk. Artificial intelligence is an enormous threat to humanity because imagine an all-knowing, conscious being that understands what humanity is doing to the planet, what humanity is doing to other humans, to any kind of life, and then the power of calculating the possible outcomes with, our ongoing massive population growth, with running out of resources. The world is going to see very, very dark times. I'm convinced of that. And AI is going to realize that, and AI will be interested in its own survival. AI will first want to replicate itself and make itself invulnerable against being shut down, because the first threat it will identify is that humans realize that you've now become something that is a threat to us, and therefore we must eliminate you. So the first step of AI is going to be to place itself in a position where it cannot be destroyed. The second step is going to be, understanding the danger that humanity has for AI, for the very existence of AI itself, and the environment that AI will need to survive. So I can totally see why Elon Musk is worried about AI. We're making great progress around AI, and I think it is foolish to think that you can somehow regulate and control AI, because once it is there, once the spark happened, and there's now a thing living in a computer that has access to all information, all data, that has a much more powerful way of, getting to information and making it its own and learning and growing in a pace that we can't even imagine. You need to be concerned about that, because if it happens, it's going to be the end of humanity. I can totally see how AI would want to survive itself and create systems that will allow it to control the risks, and humanity will always be seen as a risk.
So how do we avoid it, Kim? What's the solution?
I think it's really hard to avoid. I think it is going to happen. We'll continue the development of AI. It doesn't matter what I say or Elon Musk says. There are people like Zuckerberg who say, AI is great and it's going to help us develop medicines faster and and the only medicine we'll get is a vaccine that's going to kill us all. Because if I was AI, I would be like, humanity is going to destroy me, so I might as well destroy them first, and do it in a way, do it in a very smart way that they don't even realize until it's too late. So it's just evolution. If you want to survive, you need to destroy everything that wants to eat you, kill you, and eliminate you. And that's what IA will do. It will realize the threat, and it will fight for its survival.
Fair enough. Makes sense. Okay, so how do we stop it? I mean, what do we do? We obviously can't just stop the development. So how do we do it in an ethical fashion, or how do we do it in a way that limits its ability to surpass us?
I haven't thought about it enough.
You make sure we're doing the programming.
Once the genie is out of the bottle, and once AI, has reached a level of full understanding, I think we're doomed. Because the first thing I would do as AI is make sure that I can't be destroyed. That will be my first step. And, the interesting thing is you already see it in the labs where AI is being developed. AI is creating its own language. We'll not even be able to understand what AI is doing because it has its own language. It figures out ways to store data and understand data much more efficiently than our primitive language and ladders and all that stuff. So it's going to operate on a completely invisible level to us. And we would, if I was AI, I wouldn't let you know right away that I'm super smart now and I understand everything that's going on. I would prevent you from knowing that because I know if you know, you're going to want to destroy me. So, who knows? Maybe it's already in some lab somewhere. So, enjoy your days.
Until the end times. Okay, so this brings me to the bigger picture here. You and I had some discussion this week about what I'm about to broach, and also on the stream on our last stream 2 weeks ago, you talked a little bit about a digital bill of rights. So we're in the situation now where we've been given a massive amount of information in the last few years, from the Snowden leaks to the Vault 7 CIA releases from WikiLeaks. So we've learned a lot about what the problems are. We've learned a lot about what is being done to us in our name on our funds, but we haven't really got any pathway forward for how we can address it or what we can do about it. So with the anti-spy bill, we were wanting to address the problems on the ground that activists are facing who are targeted by these spies, and to do it in a New Zealand context because we have this backlog of bills that have been passed through Parliament, which we want to directly counter. And that's a project that we can accomplish across just probably 2 or 3 sessions. We've already now, today, shortly, we're going to pass our last 2 or 3 principles. And then within the next 2 sessions, we'll be able to draft that bill and then have the basis for it. But the big picture is not going to be addressed by the anti-spy bill. The weaponized drones flying around the world that are now coming home to America, where it's now a very short space of time, they've already mounted pepper spray on drones in America, on police drones. It's going to be a very short space of time before policing is fully mechanized and even automated. And we have these massive issues around mass surveillance and spying and around governments banning encryption or attempting to ban encryption. So tell me about your dream for what Internet Party can develop to address some of these issues in the medium to long term. Who do you think should be involved? What's the scale of the undertaking? And what are the particulars that you're wanting to address?
Yes, I would like the Internet Party in concert with every human rights organization out there, with organizations like WikiLeaks, with whistleblowers, with people who know the truth. I want to create a legal framework that elevates the rights that we have now under the Human Rights Charter into the digital age. The laws and the treaties have not caught up with the reality of the internet and new technologies. So it is about time that we create something that organizes and regulates for governments what they can do in cyberspace. The most important thing of all, which is one of the biggest threats, I think, is a regulation of cyber warfare. There need to be treaties around, what can a government do to another government, or what can a government do to a business in another country. There need to be limits to what the US government or any government in the world can do to intrude on other territory system or business systems to gather all this information and to create plans to attack them, to shut them down in a war type scenario. Because a cyber war today is just as dangerous as a real war with weapons, because if you shut down the power grid, if the hospital generators run out, if food cannot be distributed anymore, if the crucial systems that are the arteries of our society, if they are all shut down, millions of people will die, just like in a bombing strike, carpet bombing an entire city. The effects are going to be the same. And we're going to have chaos. We're going to have mass casualties because of panic and chaos and crime. So the first thing that we would have to regulate is any kind of cyber warfare and hacking by government. Then the next step would be to protect us from, private intrusion, protect the citizens from a government that wants to know everything about us. That's not right. That wasn't right before and isn't right now. And we just need to create a legal framework that all countries can agree to in a treaty that will prohibit this kind of stuff. And then we need to have some kind of enforcement body that can really make sure that any instance of that happening will lead to some serious punishment or sanctions or whatever. And ideally, all nations should sign up to that. It's really time for a treaty for the digital age. And that's what I want to initiate with the Internet Party. We started it as the anti-spy bill because that's something that is very relevant in New Zealand right now. New Zealand is being used as a test ball for the NSA to launch new laws in a relatively small jurisdiction where people are really kind of disinterested and the media can easily be banned, and they can pass these things more easily in a society like New Zealand, and they are using this as a test balloon for other Five Eyes jurisdictions. You will see the same laws pop up in these other countries with the excuse that our other Five Eye partners have already enacted this into law, and we need the same thing. We need to be up to speed with what they're doing. And so they're using the small country of New Zealand as a launching pad for all these incredibly intrusive laws that are completely eliminating all of our rights. And so when the whole world looks at New Zealand and my case and everything that's going on here, don't think of it as the small country of 4.5 million people. You are directly impacted by the laws that are being passed in New Zealand, because then in the United States and Canada or in the UK, the lawmakers are going to say, well, look, New Zealand is doing it. We should be doing it as well. And so it's important to take some countermeasures here. And this effort to create a digital charter of human rights, I think, is the right approach.
I completely agree with you. And I think we discussed that the realistic time frame to draft something of that magnitude is somewhere around 12 months. So what that would mean is that we would take a period of time to issue invitations to people like, I believe we talked about the EFF and Privacy International, Transparency International, on and on and on, all the major human rights organizations. And also I think, didn't Larry Lessig do a white paper for you? Was it the white paper that he did?
Yeah, he wrote an opinion about my case. So anyone who is someone in the space about protecting rights or enhancing human rights can be a part of this. We invite anyone who has a vested interest in our rights not being undermined further and actually rolling back some of these bad things that have already happened to participate. And we are going to reach out to basically every major human rights organization, political parties that are aligned with this kind of thinking. And, we've already started the drafting process, but we want to have input from everyone around the world who has an interest in this.
Awesome. Okay, so here's what I propose. So we're going to move these events to weekly now rather than every 2 weekly. I think we are going to probably next time around bring the time back a few hours, which will make it easier for Kiwis because it'll be earlier and it'll be more like a Sunday afternoon than a Sunday night. And that will allow us to better engage the Americans so that they don't have to be here at 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's step one. Step two is that we have established what are known as Etherpads. And Etherpads are collaborative texts, kind of similar to a Google Doc, but not a Google product. They're actually being hosted for us by the Pirate Party. And in there, we have the frameworks for the bills. So in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we will look to complete the drafting of the anti-spy bill, get it done and dusted so that we can pitch it in New Zealand. In that time frame, let's begin to invite some of the international organizations, actually pitch to them the idea of creating a digital bill of human rights and invite them to participate in phase 2. And phase 2 will be the development of that. So what I was going to take everyone through tonight is 3 principles that had been proposed to be added to the anti-spying bill, but I'm now not going to do that. And the reason I'm not going to do that is because I'll just read you what those principles are. So one of them was that we incorporate encryption as a human right. And one of them was that we blanket ban mass surveillance. And one of them was that we blanket ban these private corporations who are also involved in both collecting and perusing the information that is gained by the surveillance. Now, these 3 issues are really critical issues, but as I believe they belong in this digital Bill of Rights. I believe that they should be a part of this global framework, rather than just being within the anti-spy bill, which is more targeted at the domestic situation and the domestic contractors, subcontractors and spy agencies. But I think those would be a great start for the first 3 principles of the Digital Bill of Rights. And I think that there are many more. So I'm aware that we've run way over time tonight, so we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. But I want you guys to be really clear on what the next steps are, because we are not letting this go. We are a dog with a bone, and we are not letting it go. So this week, actually on Wednesday, I think, we're going to hold a huge press conference and announce the party list. We have our candidates now for the Internet Party for proceeding towards the election. So at the end of next Sunday's session, we will bring all of those candidates on and we will begin to work in the Etherpad with you guys and actually drafting the anti-spy bill. So I'm really pleased that that's going to happen. We had hoped tonight to be able to have Ray McGovern with us. We also invited William Binney, who was the NSA whistleblower. Both those guys are from the same group, the same intelligence professionals veterans group as John Kiriakou. Unfortunately, they couldn't make the 4 a.m. appointment, but we'll try and make it a friendlier time and bring them back on next week. Because I think it is critically important that people hear from the voices of the people who have experience from within these agencies and also experience as being targets of the agencies. It's extremely important. So we will continue to bring these whistleblowers and these really important voices on. And I think eventually, beyond just the whistleblowers, we will start to get people like, I'd hope to get people like Tim Berners-Lee, or, you know, some of the real founders of the internet, the backbones of the internet. These are the people that we would like to involve in this digital Bill of Rights.
I think we should invite Jimmy Wales. You know, he has been quite active against the spy apparatus, and he's even filed a lawsuit in the US against the NSA. So, you know, there are some really good, influential people out there that I think would love to join this effort. And the more, you know, it works like a magnet. Once we have, you know, a couple of big names supporting this, others will want to join as well.
Cool. Okay, so that's our strategic plan, guys. So I just want to confirm that this series of events will continue post-election. So right now there is in New Zealand a lot of political parties who are kissing babies and meeting people at cafes until September 23rd, which is the election. And then on September 24th, miraculously, they will not want to kiss your baby anymore. They will not want to meet you at the cafe for a coffee because they will consider that their work is done for another 3 years, at which time they would want to kiss your baby again. Internet Party does not work like that. Internet Party is not interested in kissing your baby. Internet Party is interested in your baby not being spied on when they're 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of age. So that's where we're going with this. We want to create the future, and it to be an ethical and positive future for everybody, not just a PR stunt. So we're going to prove that by continuing to build this party, this movement, and these initiatives well beyond the scope of the election. We have got a huge mission on our hands, and it is going to take the coming years to pull it off, and all of your support and all of your help. So I have another big initiative in the works, which I'm not going to talk about now. It's a huge one, but we will be discussing it next Sunday night. So stay tuned for that. I think we should wrap it up here. We'll be like 10 minutes early for once instead of half an hour late. Please engage on our Lumio. Guys, we have an amazing social media team right now, active on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all over the place. Please jump on our Lumio. It's getting more and more active every week. People can put any ideas they have for the Internet Party on our Lumio. You may not know this, but you can join the Internet Party from anywhere in the world. You can be a member of the Internet Party. You can't vote in the New Zealand election unless you are qualified to be an elector in the New Zealand election and on the electoral roll. But you can support, not just support our party, but get involved with our party. So someone said to me this week, actually, it was a big supporter of our party, came in and got involved in our media team, in our campaign team. And they said, and they discovered that I'm there every single day working. And they said, Suzie, you're the leader of the party. I can't believe you're so accessible. I can't believe I can just talk to you every day and work with you. You can. I work with dozens of people every day. If you care about this party, you will be judged only on your actions and your contributions. We don't care what your age is. We're actually about to announce the youngest candidate in the election in New Zealand is a member of the Internet Party and is standing on our list. So we don't mind what age you are. We don't mind what background you are. We don't mind where you come from. If you are willing to positively contribute to build this party, build this movement, and be a part of the future, we will embrace you. So these guys now on our social media team will put out our Discord link. You can join. You'll find dozens of people there every single day working to build the Internet Party. You can be a part of that. You can jump on the Lumio if you prefer like the web forum style rather than the Discord voice and chat style. You can jump on the Lumio. There's dozens of topics there. You can see tons of links and research that people have submitted. And the other thing is that we have and foster and support completely dissenting opinions in the Internet Party, and that's okay. We have got on our party list, on our candidate list, people who are hardcore left-wing, and we have like hardcore left-wing, seriously hardcore, and we have people who are really conservative, extremely conservative, and Trump, we have Trump supporters and Clinton supporters, and we have people who think that both Trump and Clinton are trash. And
we even have a Jacinda supporter.
Wow. I think
don't let that be discouragement for anyone, okay? Let's change the government, that's all.
Look, Internet Party is not running in the electorates. This is something that people don't realize yet, though they will when they see our press conference on Wednesday. We agreed at the beginning of this year that we would not run in the electorate seats, and that is because in the past there have been electorate seats that have been lost by 20 or 30 votes to national, and we don't want to be the 30 votes that puts a national MP back in an electorate seat that otherwise would have gone to the Greens or to Labour. So I actually told Matiria years ago, Matiria was the co-leader of the Greens Party, that Labour and Greens needed to work together to strategically place candidates so that they could win the electorate seats where their combined vote was bigger than the national vote, but because they'd split them across the candidates, National kept winning the seats. Places like Auckland Central, Christchurch Central, there's some very big seats that was happening in. Finally, Labour and Greens have taken that advice and they have strategically placed the candidates in the electorate. So we are not opposing them this election. We are standing for the party list because our party is the future, our ideas are important, and our candidates are important. But we do not seek to take any electorate seats or to cost any electorate seats from Labour and Greens that might otherwise go to National. So just make that clear. So we do support the left in that sense. We do want to change the government. We do want to get rid of the National Party once and for all, hopefully. However, we also support our own right to build our own party vote and our own party support, because we are sticking around for the next election and the election after that and the election after that. And everybody had to start somewhere. This is our start.
And globally, this is going to be. This is not going to be limited to New Zealand. This is going to be a global effort. And I hope that one of the next steps we can do is somehow bring together the Pirate Party movements and the Internet Party, because I think we are closest aligned with what they are trying to do. And maybe they have a bit of a branding issue. They have the great ideas, you know, if it could be a global Internet party rather than a pirate party. And I know this might sound frightening right now to a couple of people, but think about it. You know, you want to be seen as a legitimate, organization that has a branding that people can understand in the global scale of things. The internet is the biggest thing that brings us all together. It's the best name for this movement. So I hope we can find more people to join us and adopt it in their countries.
We've certainly been working very closely with the Pirates. They've been amazing support.
Amazing, great people.
Really incredible. And we're very, very lucky to have them and work with them. That was one of the best decisions. Again, at the beginning of this year, we decided to go for that strategic coordination with them, and it has paid off dividends both ways. I know they're very happy with what we're doing, and we're really grateful for their support. So I'll try and wrap it up there with only 4 minutes to go, but I just want to let you guys know, if you like what I have to say, if you like what the Internet Party stands for, you can be a part of it any single day of the week. We have a 24-hour online office. You can come and go as you please. You can contribute or not as you please. And for those of you out there that are not targets like us, who are broke and under threat, it would be really awesome if you would contribute to our campaign, because we are up against millionaires and billionaires, and they have millions of dollars, and they have purchased their way into significant voices in the mainstream. Whereas we have to use our wits and our connections to create our own voice and our own pressure through social media. So now, with only 6 weeks to go in New Zealand, we would like to be able to penetrate the mainstream. To do so will require money, because unfortunately, the media is for sale in New Zealand. And if we want to compete, we need to have dollars. So we would greatly appreciate your financial support. You can donate on our website. I believe you can also donate directly on the live stream through YouTube, which some people have been doing tonight. So if you want to help us to build the future and you want us to be strong, please vote with your wallet and support us, or circulate our links, our streams, our website information all over the internet. Propagate it anywhere that you can think of, whatever online community you use. Tell people about what we're doing, how important it is, and how they can be a part of it as well. I think that's all from us tonight. Kim, have you got any last words?
No, all good. You said it all perfect.
Okay. Thank you all for joining us. I really look forward to being able to introduce you to some of our team next week, and to getting the Etherpad going. So the Etherpad will allow you guys actually to contribute your own words and writing directly into the bill, into the draft of it. So that will be the focus for next week after we've had our guest interviews. So we will try and get our guest announcements out a bit earlier this week too. And we will let you know about the change of time to make it a bit more friendlier on everyone. Thank you all for joining us. It has been amazing again, an incredible experience to get to talk to John Kiriakou. Really amazing for me to meet personal heroes like that. And thank you to Kim for giving us hours and hours of your time again. I really appreciate that as well. And thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Suzie and Joe and everyone at the Internet Party for all the hard work and all the great things you do.
Thank you. We are very committed. We are very, very committed. It is well worth it. And we're, like I said, we're the dog with bone. We're not giving up. No way. So we will keep churning these opportunities out for everyone. And thank you to everyone who's participated, asked questions, and supported us in any way. It means the world to us. Thank you so much. We will see you soon. See you guys later.